Okay, well, in the interest of everyone's valuable time, we'll we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, Once again, this is Rudy Ortiz with the Arkansas District Export Council. I'm the chair of the Education Committee, and today we're going to be starting the first class out of four export finance related classes. And the topic for today's webinar is going to be the Export-Import Bank, otherwise known as the EXIM Bank, and SBA, Small Business Administration, resources that are available to companies who are exporting or wish to export. And we're going to have two gentlemen who are experts in their field in terms of export finance resources. And we hope that you'll be able to get a lot of value from that. In addition, we're going to have a couple of District Export Council members who have used the services or have been involved with the services that these agencies provide to be able to give you their perspective on how they've used it and what their experience has been. And I think that the combination of those two things should provide you with a very clear idea of how they can be used and what all the technical aspects of the services that EXIM Bank and SBA can provide to exporters. Next slide, please. So do be aware that you are able to ask questions in the Q&A function that you should be seeing there. And we will be answering the questions at the end of the speaker's presentation to make sure that we have enough time to get everything done and at the same time answer your questions. Do be aware that if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, we will make sure that you have the contact information of all the presenters today so that you can ask them a question if you need to. Thank you so much. Next one. So we are doing these series of classes on behalf of the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department, which is the department within the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Their mission is to assist manufacturers to maximize enterprise value by assisting them with innovation, operational excellence, sustainability, and leadership development. And the people who work at the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions have been involved with manufacturing in various capacities for many, many years, lots of expertise, and it's a great organization that I once belonged to as a consultant. And they are somebody that if you're in manufacturing, you definitely want on your team. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also with the District Export Council, and the mission of the DEC, as we call it, is to encourage and support exports of goods and services that will strengthen individual companies, stimulate U.S. economic growth, and most importantly, create jobs. At the end of the day, almost every state and federal program that is involved with economic development is their main mission at the end of the day is creation of jobs. Okie dokie. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I think that we're actually going to start with a poll question. Ms. Heidi, my apologies for switching gears on you. Let's go ahead and put up one of the poll questions first, if we can. All righty. So if this is intended to be a little bit of interactive, and so if you guys would go ahead and answer these questions, that would be very useful. Do you currently export? Yes or no? Have you ever used the Export-Import Bank? Have you ever used the SBA, any SBA resources? And if you guys would go ahead and respond to those questions, that would be lovely. Okay, Ms. Heidi, I think we probably have enough time. And if we're able to show the results, that would be great. Okay, so it looks like about 78% of the current audience has not used, I'm sorry, is not currently exporting. So that's great, because this is certainly intended for those people who are interested in doing proactive, strategically planned exporting. So that's great. Apparently, no one has used EXIM, so this is going to be a real treat for you guys, because it's a tremendous agency, and apparently 44% of the audience has used some SBA resource. So this is great information. Thank you much. Okay, so I want to go ahead and introduce our guests shortly. Mr. Michael Dwiggins is the lender account manager at the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And Mr. Reggie Jackson, Reggie Jackson, I have baseball on my mind. Reggie Harley is the regional manager. We wish, right? He's the regional manager for Export Solutions Group at the SBA, and he's out of New Orleans. Did I say that correctly? New Orleans? Anyway, so these are gentlemen who have been in the for the financial field, either with EXIM or banking or the SBA for a really long time, and they have great information. In addition, you're probably also seeing James Clark and Keith Smith. They are two District Export Council members that have experienced utilizing these products. And I think that we're going to go ahead and actually start with them, if that's okay. Jim, if you'll turn on your mic there and tell us a little bit about your experience with either the export products or EXIM products or the SBA products.
Thanks, Rudy. This is James Clark, and you want me to go ahead and get started on?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good deal. So as Rudy mentioned, I have been involved with the District Export Council for several years, and it's given me the opportunity to really get intertwined and dovetailed with the resources that the Export Council provides. And I'm going to give sort of the counterbalance to the story that Keith is going to give. The Keith Smith Company is going to be the perfect example of the trajectory that we would love to see companies grow into over time. He's the perfect example of how you take an opportunity and grow with it. But my case studies are more involved with the simple question of a company that had an opportunity to begin to export and didn't really know where to get started or how to get started, but realized that there were resources that are available to help them successfully develop into export sales markets and grow revenues to really support and grow their companies in regard to the opportunities. So the significance, I feel like, of each of these and the similarities that you have is we're all going to identify an opportunity that exists, and it's just how do we capture that? And so the first example that I've got is a company up in North Central Arkansas. Altronic Resources is an electronics components manufacturing company, and they specialize in radio technology. So their U.S. market over the last 10 to 15 years has constantly been evolving into a different technology. And so as their market has begun to get a little bit more restricted, they've identified that outside of the U.S. is really where a lot of the growth and opportunity exists, because there are still many countries that are riding the same technology. And for Altronics, it was, we know who those companies are. It's just a matter of how do we capture that new opportunity. And that's where the EXIM Bank came in. So EXIM Bank, Altronics realized that they were going to have to change the way they transacted business from a cash in advance requirement to providing longer terms to foreign buyers. And so longer terms and foreign buyers equals an increase in the risk that they may not get paid for their services. So EXIM Bank has several different flavors of programs that ensure those international receivables. And so Altronics was able to access these online, basically dashboard point and click services to help them identify that in specific transactions, EXIM Bank would carry the risk in the event that they didn't get paid. So what it allowed Altronics to do was to get into several different markets, especially in the Middle East and in South America, which is where they identified some of their largest demand for their product was. And it allowed them to reach out and develop relationships that otherwise they would not have been able to turn into revenue. So the shift was their domestic market was changing based on technology. Their company was not going to change in regard to what they can provide. So they had to grow their market, and that consisted of finding the international buyers, and EXIM Bank supported that increase in the risk of the longer terms to buyers that they really didn't have a lot of credit information on. The other story that I want to share is Fisher Honey, a Little Rock-based honey distributor. Their situation they've reached a platform where the price on their product was becoming more commoditized, and for them to increase margin, they were going to have to find new markets that had a greater value on their product. So fortunately for them, they were able to identify some food companies and consumer markets in Mexico and in South America that they could sell into and achieve a greater margin with the same product. And what they did is they also accessed the EXIM Bank insurance products that made sure that the customer that they were selling to was legitimate, and that financially, if there was an instance of non-payment, that the EXIM Bank could protect them in regard to that non-payment of the receivable. So it allowed, again, the challenge that Fisher had was that their prices that were they couldn't control the price of their market, but what they could find is new markets that had a different price point to help them be more profitable. So both instances, there was an element that existed that the listeners, you know, that specific to your company, there are things that impact you. Both of these companies were able to access the EXIM Bank to find a way to create new markets and grow their companies.
Jim, thank you so much. That's some great examples of the utilization of these products. Keith, if you would turn on your mic and let us know what your experience has been, that'll be great.
Thank you, Rudy. My name is Keith Smith. I'm with the Keith Smith Company in Hot Springs, Arkansas. We are a family-owned business and producers of broiler hatching eggs and day-old broiler chicks for the poultry industry in the Western Hemisphere. And I too am a part of the District Export Council with Rudy as well. And really how we were introduced to EXIM Bank was our lender, our primary bank in Little Rock, recommended that we attend a conference similar to this one in Little Rock. And one of the things that we realized is that many times when we were shipping our product, which is a perishable product, we would all be actively waiting for these transfers to hit our bank account before we could load the truck and it be shipped out for export. There were several times where there were issues with the bank transaction and the deal would fall through. And so being introduced to EXIM Bank really gave us an opportunity to turbocharge our exports. And one of the terms that I really liked that James Clark mentioned was building relationships. So where our competitors had been waiting for cash in advance, waiting to be able to load their vehicles, load the trucks with product before they were able to ship out, when we were able to start using EXIM Bank, it really gave us a new lease on life as far as how to build our credit relationships with our customers. And it also gave us the credit insurance to be able to offer attractive credit terms to those export customers. And it really put our business in the forefront of being able to make the sale and attract even higher prices. So one of the things that we talked about yesterday a little bit was when we were able to offer credit terms instead of cash in advance, we were actually able to capitalize on some higher margins for our product. Our customers were willing to pay a little bit more for a product in order to have those attractive credit terms that EXIM Bank provided us to offer. So one of the things that our bank really enjoyed was when we enacted the EXIM credit policies for our credit insurance with our individual broker, that really gave both our bank and our shareholders a comfort level for our carrying our accounts receivable for these export customers. And that was one of the things that really just turbocharged our business back in 2012, was the ability to start exporting at high volumes with credit terms to well-known large customers outside of the US. Our primary markets are Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So, it also allowed us to, these credit terms also allowed us to compete in some places that our customers would not, or excuse me, our competitors would not go. And it also provided us the opportunity to take advantage of some clients that had some kind of some emergency shipments. They said, hey, I have an urgent need for your product. And it provided us the opportunity to price that emergency as appropriate and extend the credit terms to make the sale happen. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that, through our business relationship with EXIM Bank, it really started the foundation of ledger history with some of these clients outside of the US. That ledger history has turned into some business relationships. I was going through this morning. We have some customers that we've been doing business with now for 12, 15, 16 years on a weekly basis. And those have turned into cornerstone business relationships for our company that our shareholders have good faith in making those investments in the production capacity on a week-to-week basis. The last thing I wanted to kind of comment on as a poster child for being a user of EXIM Bank. So I've talked about how great it was. We added these policies, we started exporting, our revenues went up, our investments in production went up, our employment went up. Well, then somebody decided that they weren't going to pay. And they've got two instances. The first one was we had about $750,000 for a customer in South Mexico, and they just slow paid us. We worked with our broker to turn in all of the invoices, and they walked us through the next processes. And we sent the infamous U.S. federal government letter that they helped us draft, which basically communicated, hey, esteemed partner, we really need this payment. What we're trying to avoid is enacting this EXIM insurance, which will bring the full force of the U.S. federal government involved in your credit ratings. And it was surprising how quickly we received payment that week after we had remitted that formal letter. The second instance that we had was a company in the Dominican Republic. Their market conditions had changed. They didn't feel the need to pay our invoices because their market conditions had changed. And we ended up having to turn the claim over to EXIM Bank. And I'll just say that it was probably one of the most positive experiences where you think it would be negative, but it worked just as promised. We filed the claim. Our broker helped us send in all the proper documentation. We were paid very quickly from the policy, and then it was over. We got our money, and we were able to focus back on different parts of our business. And just a funny story in closing, this customer called me about 4 months after, and he said, "Hey, listen, whoever these creditors are, I need you to make it stop." And he told me that his wife's passport had been quote unquote zapped and was not able to travel back to Miami because it was indeed involved with the Department of State. It had been reported there. And he even went as far as there were people, business people that he did business with that it affected his credit. And they even came up to him in church and asked why he wasn't paying his bills to this guy in Arkansas. So I can attest that the EXIM Bank was very instrumental in growing our exports. It was instrumental in expanding our business footprint and employment, and it works.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Keith, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to convey here is that one of the reasons that a lot of companies do not export from a strategic perspective is because they're concerned about getting paid. And this program having to do with the various financing tools that we're going to be talking about over the next 4 weeks, and in today's session with EXIM and SBA is about risk mitigation. At the end of the day, if you knew for a fact that you were going to get paid and that there really was no risk, that doing business with somebody in Guatemala was no different than doing business with someone in Kansas, why wouldn't you do that, right? Well, these instruments, these programs remove the risk to a very significant degree and allow you the comfort to be able to do exporting, to expand your markets in a way that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, with a comfort level that you wouldn't have otherwise. So that is really the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here, is make you aware of those programs. Michael, why don't we start with you, if we please would, and you've got about 15 minutes.
Okay, let me pull up this presentation. Okay, can everyone see this first screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think what you've just heard from Keith and James is about as good a commercial as we could hope to get at EXIM Bank. So I'm very appreciative to both of them for their comments. And I want to take the next 10 minutes or so to kind of put it all together for you, and as regards what we do at EXIM and how we try to support U.S. exporters, Arkansas exporters in this case, to grow export sales and to do so safely. First, for those who aren't familiar with EXIM, we are a U.S. federal government agency. We're the Export Credit Agency. That's what ECA stands for. We're the Export Credit Agency of the United States government. We fill in spots where the private sector doesn't want to take the risk. There is very good private sector credit insurance offerings, but generally when exporters are first starting out, their premiums are small and aren't attractive to the private sector insurers. So we will do a transaction of any size. And so there's nothing too large or too small for EXIM to consider. So we deal a lot with companies that are first starting out with their export activities and beginning to insure foreign accounts receivable. That's where we play a very major role. We also try to level the playing field for U.S. companies as they compete globally against other countries where those export credit agencies subsidize or support those exports in ways that make it difficult for U.S. companies to compete fairly. And almost everything we do, we look for a reasonable assurance of repayment. You'll hear EXIM Bank employees use that term often. We have to balance the interest of the U.S. taxpayer and to minimize our claims and defaults against the need of you as the exporter to win the business and have the credit transaction insured. So we always are trying to be as aggressive as we can to help you within the context of looking for a reasonable assurance of repayment. Our products fall into two major categories: export credit insurance and loan guarantees. And the export credit insurance products you've already heard mentioned this morning, we especially focus on small business, riskier countries, single buyers, an economic crisis. We played roles during economic crisis where we try to help exporters continue to sell into those countries. You do not have to insure a portfolio of receivables with us. You can have a single customer. In fact, many exporters start off with a single customer they want to insure. They may continue to try to ask for cash in advance from the wide majority of customers they have, or letters of credit from those customers, but there may come a situation where you'd like to sell a nice potential transaction to a customer or new customer, and you need to offer credit terms, and you start off with a single buyer for whom you seek insurance coverage. We can do single buyers, we can do small dollar amounts in addition to larger dollar amounts and multi-buyer policies. And we also take on some riskier countries, which you're going to see in a minute. We also have a working capital loan guarantee program. Now, this product does not protect you, the exporter. If you want protection, you have to obtain a credit insurance policy. Credit insurance protects the exporter. It can be assigned to a lender. The lender can finance those insured receivables with that assignment of the insurance policy to them, the proceeds of that policy. But the working capital guarantee loan program provides an EXIM Bank 90% guarantee of principal and interest to a lender to induce them to lend to you on very advantageous terms and conditions. So for instance, for the exporter, the benefit of having a working capital guarantee loan is higher advance rates against accounts receivable and inventory. The accounts receivable, if you have them insured, you would likely be able to get a lender to finance them for 90% advance rates anyway. But the great advantage to the working capital guarantee program is if those foreign accounts receivable are not insured because they're customers that you've known for many years and you're comfortable with, the bank can still finance up to 90% of the value of those receivables with this program. And many times banks will not finance foreign accounts receivable without either credit insurance or this program. Another great advantage to the working capital guarantee program is rather than the lender financing, say, 50% of the value of your inventory, the lender can finance 75% of the value of your inventory. And up to 75% of the total borrowings can be against inventory. So for companies that need to borrow the maximum possible against inventory, this is a great program. For companies that need to issue lots of standby letters of credit, we also have an excellent feature to this program in that rather than 100% cash collateralizing a standby letter of credit or 100% collateralizing it against your company assets, you're allowed to issue letters of credit for bid and performance bond purposes for export transactions at a 25% collateralization or even 10% collateralization against the borrowing base. And it's not cash collateralization. It's just blocked off against your value of accounts receivable and inventory. This is complex stuff for a lot of people, so I'm happy to discuss it with any of you later at your convenience as to what all this means in more detail and explain it in much more depth. But this working capital guarantee program can provide significant advantages to exporters in leveraging their collateral to the max. As we've mentioned, we're very small business focused. About 90% of our transactions support small business transactions, small business exporters. No company or transaction is too small. And we do Boeing aircraft, and we do transactions that are just a few $1,000s. So a $3,000-$5,000 transaction is not too small for us. You've talked about this morning already kind of a spectrum of interest of risk between cash in advance all the way over to offering credit on open account terms. That spectrum of risk is what EXIM Bank is here to help you deal with. So obviously, if you can sell cash in advance, if you can export requiring cash in advance terms or letters of credit, fantastic. Most exporters try to do that as much as they can. But as you move away from cash in advance and letters of credit to offering more and more credit terms, 30, 60, 90, 180 days, then you're facing greater risk. And that's where we're here to step in and take that risk for you as the Export-Import Bank. This is a chart that basically just breaks down what we've talked about already this morning. On one side, we're here to help you with the risk of buyer non-payment. We do that through credit insurance. We have a credit insurance product to meet your need, probably your every need. The other issue that you may have is access to cash flow, converting those accounts receivable and your inventory into cash. And our working capital guarantee line helps the lender get comfortable providing you a line of credit that does that at the maximum advance rates possible against your accounts receivable and your inventory. Something that's very important to keep in mind is, where does EXIM Bank do business? As you're considering exporting all over the world and you're looking at different countries and different prospects, prospective customers, you've got to make sure it's a country where we do business. So if you put these words in Google, country limitation schedule, there's only one country limitation schedule that can come up, and that's the EXIM Bank country limitation schedule. And it will tell you whether or not we are open in a particular country and under what terms and conditions. It looks like this. For example, when you pull it up, you'll see a list of countries in alphabetical order. You can go down right now. This is out of date. Argentina's got X's all across the page, but you will see X's in countries where we're closed. We give you the breakdown for public sector risk and private sector risk. Sometimes we're open in one and closed in the other. We also give you the breakdown by tenor of the transaction, up to a year, 1 to 7, or over 7. So it's great to check before you start thinking of using EXIM Bank to protect your risk in a given market. Check the country in the country limitation schedule, see if we're open. There are footnotes, as you notice with Angola, you see in the far right-hand corner of the line, there are footnotes. Those notes may say things like, we only do business in this country if there's a commercial bank guarantee or obligor on the transaction. It may say that any public sector transaction has to be with the Ministry of Finance. There's some common footnotes and requirements that we have for many countries. What determines whether we're open or closed in a country is basically, it revolves around whether it's a country where we're legally prohibited to do business. So for instance, North Korea, we cannot do business for Iran, right now, Russia, Cuba, are countries where we're prohibited from doing business for legal reasons. And then there's countries where we wish we could do business, but for economic reasons, we can't take that risk right now. And the obvious one on this page that you see is Argentina. So that is one to certainly consider. You'll notice the example for Antigua and Barbuda is that we're open in the private sector, but we're closed in the public sector. So you will see that from time to time as well. And if you have questions about specific countries, you can certainly ask myself or others at EXIM.
You know, Michael, it occurs to me that one should use this list also to get a sense of whether this is a country you want to be doing business in. That might be a good first pass, right?
Right, sure. And you know, in some cases, you can see which ones it's illegal for us to do business in, but it will give you a very good feel. Like if you looked at that right now and you saw the X's on Argentina, you would learn something about Argentina if you're not familiar with the country. And we still occasionally get questions about Argentina that folks are not completely clear on the current situation. It's been rather fluid. And so, you know, this, as Rudy just mentioned, this country limitation schedule gives you a good snapshot on the status of the countries of the world at any point in time. So it's nice to review. We use insurance brokers a lot, like James. You know, you heard James earlier. We use a lot of credit insurance brokers in our world, and the credit insurance brokers help the exporters apply for a policy, determine which policy first, which is the best policy for them in their situation, and to apply for a policy. And then you got to qualify the individual account debtor, the individual buyer. And what's required depends on the size credit limit that you need. So if you're asking for $1 million credit limit, you're going to need financial statements on that buyer for the last 2 years. But if you're asking for a $10,000 or $20,000 credit limit, you may just need a credit report. So this chart and any credit insurance broker can help you obtain the appropriate information for the size credit limit you seek. As much as possible, we try to allow credit reports, which your broker can order for you. Usually, we try to use those credit reports as the sole information needed to approve a credit limit that fits your needs. But as the dollar amount gets larger, yes, the information required will be greater. And this chart's just an example of how we manage that information requirement.
Okay. Michael, we've got just a couple of minutes on your end.
Okay. Again, final risk covered for credit insurance policies. We cover the insolvency, the bankruptcy, or the protracted default on the commercial side, and we cover anything that pretty much happens on the political side. What you will see most often is protracted default, where the company doesn't technically go into bankruptcy or an insolvency, they just fail to pay you. We call that protracted default. The one thing that's important to point out here is that disputes with the buyer are not covered. So if there is a dispute over product quality, or did you ship the product they ordered, does the invoice match the purchase order, those sorts of issues, those are not covered by credit insurance. I'll leave you folks. I don't know, Rudy, if there's a way to actually get this presentation to everybody, or
Yes.
okay. I just put on here a couple of insurance examples that are appropriate for people new to export. You know, we have an express insurance policy for people just starting out that's very easy to use, that it covers, 10 buyers or less, and it's very inexpensive to use as well. I can provide anyone interested more information on express insurance later, but it's a great policy, multi-buyer policy to kind of start off using EXIM with. And then we also have the single buyer policy. And down here, we just give you a price example for the UAE, how cheap it is. For instance, if you have a non-financial institution transaction of 180 days, it's 1.35%. If it was 60 days, it's 0.67%. These are not expensive premiums. Of course, the UAE is a country of a lower level of risk, but happy to discuss these insurance options with you in greater detail. We don't have a lot of requirements for exporters. That we want you to have been in business at least 1 year. You've got to have a unique identity number now, which has replaced the DUNS number. We are requiring that the products you sell have 50% U.S. content or greater. So we do have a U.S. content requirement of 50% or greater. We have no military or defense products that we support. And of course, you have to look at that country limitation schedule to make sure the country that you're wanting to sell to is a country where we're open. But other than those things, checking the country against the country limitation schedule, making sure you have more than 50% U.S. content, or at least 50% U.S. content, those are requirements that you need to be potentially eligible for EXIM Bank.
Perfect, Michael. Thank you so much. And obviously, we are going to provide the presentations to those that ask for it, and that way they'll have all the information available to them. Mr. Reggie, you're up next, sir.
Well, thank you so much. Let me see if I can bring mine up, my presentation. Good morning to each and every one of you that are out there. Thank you for taking the time to listen in on this. I hope that you've already, and I'm sure you've already garnered a great deal of knowledge and understanding beyond that, perhaps, that you had before, as a result of what you've heard thus far. Let's see here. I'm trying to bring up my presentation. Well, as you can expect, what we thought would be a smooth process seems to not be.
Yeah. Heidi, are you able to call that up by any chance?
Full screen. I am so sorry.
There we go.
Wonderful. Well, do I still have control though?
I think so.
So I don't see how I can.
There we go.
Great. Okay. I don't think I have control though.
Okay. Well,
No, you'll have to just tell me.
Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate the backup. I'm Reggie Harley with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and I just wanted to share with you some information about the SBA export loan programs that we have, along with the other resources that we offer, at least a few of them. You can go to the next slide. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these ones. You probably already kind of have a sense that one of the messages that we're trying to convey in this webinar is just the immense opportunity there is, and how oftentimes there are businesses that are out there that are just steps away from being able to export, and that and we just want you to know that there are resources out there, much like that which Michael has presented relative to EXIM, and other resources that are available to you so that you can at least explore the idea of selling globally. If your product has value and you found markets here in the United States, it is very likely that there's also opportunity beyond our shores. Next slide. Again, this is just some information on how our U.S. economy is dependent on the ability to sell abroad. Next slide. Same thing, 98% of the exporters are small businesses. Michael touched on that. And one of the things that we like to speak about is that when it comes to those businesses that export, in this the bottom quarter slide portion of the slide, businesses that export tend to stay in business longer, employ more people, have greater sales, and in general, and again, these are generalizations, pay their employees more. Next slide. The SBA defines an export as a transaction, as being a transaction of products. And let me see how I have this here. This is the SOP definition. The SOP definition is an export transaction is the production and payment associated with the sale of goods or services to a foreign buyer. We used to think of an export at the SBA as one where a US-based business sold a product or service to a foreign buyer. And that worked for us for a while. But we realized, and now we've opened that up to the fact that we will now include those businesses that drop ship, where perhaps they purchase a product, it's a US-based business that purchases a product in Mexico, and then have that product shipped directly to Colombia or shipped directly to Canada. Before, we did not include that as an export, but we do now. And we have some other wider, more liberal, if you will, options that we will allow. And if you can get in touch with me, then I can talk through whether or not a situation that you have may be eligible for that. But I just want to be real clear that we have a broader definition of what an export is. We also, at least contrary to, and our sister agency, EXIM, Mike did a great job in covering all that they do, at least some of those things that they do. But we do have some differences in what we do. One is that we don't require at least 51% US content, and we can also support with our loan guarantee programs some defense-related transactions. Next slide. We allow as well indirect exporting, where we are supporting those businesses that sell to exporters. So that you may have a situation where your business is selling, just to use that example of the business that Michael referenced, where your business is selling to Boeing aircraft, and Boeing being an exporter, we can support that small business selling to Boeing, and we would refer to that as an indirect export, so that our loan guarantee programs can support that. We can also support with our international trade loan those businesses that have been adversely impacted or affected by import competition. That's a big issue down in Louisiana and parts of Texas and Mississippi as well on the Gulf Coast, where in particular the seafood industry has been adversely impacted by the sale of Chinese and to a lesser extent Vietnamese seafood in the United States being imported into the United States and depressing the price of those products. And so that we've been able to help some businesses pivot into other areas of operation, maybe doing some value-added things and or do some improvement of their automated processes in order to reduce their costs and become more competitive. So yes, we can actually help in that area as well. Next slide. Again, relative to EXIM, we follow that same country limitation schedule as they do. Michael mentioned Cuba and Iran and North Korea as some of those countries where it's basically a no-go, as we say, and there are a few others. And even where there is a no-go, there may be some issues around either the public sector and or the private sector that are at play and that we want you to be mindful of. And so that those challenges may cause lenders to not want to support what it is you want to do. And in some instances, the US government can't support it as well. Next slide. I should also point out that there are certain things that we at the SBA don't support. One of them would be convenience stores and gas stations. And the other, and then there may be one or two others, you can get in touch with me around those that we don't support. Next slide. This in general, this is just a representation of the sales cycle. And I just wanted to present this because it gives you an understanding of the various aspects of a transaction, whether it is a service or a product being sold. But there's the sales development aspect of it, which is pre-export, the production of the item, again, pre-export. And then there is the post-export, which is where the product has been shipped and you're waiting for payment. And we can support all aspects of that sales cycle. Next slide. I have here 4 items that we offer. And the first one on here is the STEP program, the State Trade Expansion Program grant. And we also have 3 loan products listed here, the Export Express, Export Working Capital, and International Trade Loan. I want to add one other one that it is not represented here called the CAP line. I'm going to talk about each one of those going forward. Next slide. STEP grant program. I think that if there's one thing that you have as a takeaway in the presentation on my part today, it is the STEP grant. It's an opportunity. It's monies that the state of Arkansas through the World Trade Center have competed for and received, a grant that they've received that they now use to help businesses either explore the idea of exporting or support that which they're doing or make shifts in that which they're doing relative to their ongoing exporting activities. With this money, you can learn how to export. You can participate in foreign trade and or trade shows, trade missions and or trade shows. You can use it to help modify your website to make it more attractive to foreign buyers. You can also use it to design your international marketing materials and products in order to, again, be able to penetrate foreign markets. This grant money is a cost reimbursement program. It's where you will make application to the World Trade Center there in Rogers. You will then be considered for it. And if you are approved, then you would then undertake whatever the activity is that you propose, whether it's going on a foreign trade mission. You will undertake that trade mission. Maybe it is the purchase of an airplane ticket. It is the booking of a room. It is the payment of the registration and or participation fee at the trade show, if it's it's a trade show or if it's a trade mission, going on that trade mission, doing your meetings, and then returning. You would then take the receipts that you've accumulated and turn those into the World Trade Center, and you will be reimbursed a certain percentage of those total costs that you incurred for that. It can be up to 75% of the total costs that you incurred in that regard. So it's a wonderful program. The state of Arkansas, again with the World Trade Center, just competed and received $100,000 for this program year. I will put in the chat a link to that office so that you can learn more about it and maybe consider making application. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the U.S. Small Business Administration guarantees loans that a small business will hopefully receive through a lender, private lender. The guarantee can be up to 90% of the total amount. So that I wanted to talk to you just a bit about the Export Express loan program that we have and a few others. Export Express loan program is one that where your business can apply for up to a $500,000 loan, and you can use it for these things that you see listed here. I think the thing about this one is that if you can excuse me for just a minute, please. I'm sorry. I just want to mention the Export Express program is one of $500,000. It can be used to support both export activities as well as your domestic activities. And it can be used as a term loan or as a revolving line of credit. It can help support your export development. It can finance your export orders in the way that you see here. And it can also help you if you need to purchase fixed assets in order to support that which you're doing. Next slide, please. The Export Working Capital Loan Program is the second one that we have. This one is for usually more seasoned exporters, very much like that which Michael talked about with EXIM. One of the major differences is that our loan limit is $5 million, whereas the EXIM can go well beyond that. But otherwise, it can be used to support financing of export orders, both pre-export and post-export activities. It can also help you free up cash in the same way that the EXIM product does when it comes to issuing letters of credit. And it can also be used, just as we said, to be patient, to receive payment and be able to cover your costs while you're waiting on payment to occur. The benefit, again, in the same way as with EXIM, is to allow you to be more competitive so that in the event that you can't compete by offering cash in advance, you can use this EWCP loan in order to offer terms, 90, 120-day payment terms on that which you're doing. Next slide, please. The International Trade Loan is a third one that we have. This one also has a $5 million maximum. It is a term loan only, and it is used if you have need of purchasing for fixed assets like a building, renovating the building that you have, maybe purchasing more equipment that you may need in order to become more export competitive, retooling. It can be a permanent working capital and be used for that. And it can also be used to purchase, as I said, equipment, or it can be a combination of these things. So that it's a very flexible product that can be offered. And again, it is to benefit the lender and entice them to support that which you want to do. Next slide.
And Reggie, we're down to about a minute.
Okay. I have here and on the one that follows this, a couple of case studies that give an example of how both the STEP program, the use of the small business development centers that I did not talk about, and of course our loan products have benefited some small businesses that we've worked with. And so you at your, as I understand it, these will be provided, the slide decks will be provided, and you can look at this at your leisure. It's the second success story, and you can move on. So that if you have any questions beyond that, which I presented at this point, then feel free to get in touch with me. My contact information is here. And I appreciate just this opportunity to present here, and just want to encourage you to look at exporting as a way to just make your business a lot more diverse in what it does. Thank you, Rudy and Heidi, for this opportunity. And thank you all for the time that you spent in listening to me.
Reggie, thank you very much, as well as Michael, for providing this fantastic information. And once again, as we mentioned before, this is a way to be able to expand into or expand your existing export efforts and minimize your risk, which gives you more chances and more opportunities to increase your revenues. Heidi, do we currently have any questions out there? I'm not able to see them.
Sorry, no open questions.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I do see in the chat, and I'll just read them off very quickly. Someone mentioned I had a Tabasco State, Mexico, planning to attend the EXIM event convention, but was canceled. And apparently it's a rich toma, it looks like what it says. The objective was bilateral cooperation in trade. There's been no follow-up since, working on American sales supply chain to Walmart, Mexico, and Tyson Foods. And Rich, if there's any question that you have or need to get in contact with any one of us, please feel free to do so. And for Reggie and Michael, the gentleman's name, Rich Toma, looks like 70 is the phone number, 702-675-8101.
Yeah,
And
I've already texted him, Rudy.
Perfect.
Yeah, to ask what the current situation is on the opportunity. One thing for people to keep in mind, Mexico has restrictions involving state level cross-border lending. So I'm not sure whether that was, just to promote business, or whether specifically they were thinking of doing something, at the level of lending to a state government. But Mexico does have cross-border lending restrictions to the state governments. But happy to discuss that. We've exchanged text messages, so happy to discuss it in more detail.
Perfect. All righty. And I think the other comments are by Mr. Toma as well. And Reggie, as he mentioned before, has put a link here, HTTP, and then ARWTC, the World Trade Center.org/STEP. And they are the executors of the STEP grant on behalf of the SBA. And so that's an organization, one of our partners here in Arkansas. They happen to be in Northwest Arkansas, specifically in Rogers. But feel free to contact them about the STEP grant, which is a fabulous program that really provides a lot of value to people wanting to expand their exports. And they're definitely the experts in that. I think since at this point we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and close out the program. Heidi, I think you're going to provide a slide with everyone's contact information. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'm also putting them in the chat right now. So so they will be coming to you in multiple ways.
Great. Well, very good. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to contact whoever you think is the appropriate person for your question. You can always contact me, and I'm happy to field whatever questions you have to the appropriate person if it is not me. And be aware that we're going to have 3 more export finance related webinars in the following 3 weeks, Wednesdays from 9 to 10 Central Time. We will be covering different aspects of risk, in essence, risk mitigation. At the end of the day, that's what this is about in terms of trying to increase your exports. And with that, I think, yeah, here's the slide that gives us the additional topics and the dates and times that we're going to be covering these topics: international banking products next Wednesday, and November the 2nd, trade credit services, and then managing currency risk. These are all topics that, if you're going to be expanding your export sales efforts, are good things to know to try to mitigate your risk and be able to provide you with additional opportunities to export and to beat out your competition, which is, at the end of the day, we all want to do. Well, very good. Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right. Well, then with that, we will go ahead and close up the program. Thank you very much for having attended. And once again, feel free to contact these people. You might want to take a picture of the contact information there so that you have that handy. But nevertheless, feel free to call us if we can be of service. Once again, this is Rudy Ortiz with the Arkansas District Export Council on behalf of the Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions Department. Thank you again. Have a great day.